Before we get started, let's talk about Stop Motion Studio and take a look at the layout and understand the features. So when I hit that question mark, it does show me what all the buttons do and what it is. But on the left side here, we have something called onion skin. And when you bring it to about halfway, what that does is it allows you to see a ghost image of what your frame looked like previously. So then if this was my first shot, then I can move the object in the frame, and it'll show me where it was in the last shot. Makes it a lot easier because then you know exactly how much or what your previous location was when you're moving your objects. And then grid lines allow you to change your shot into rule of thirds and also can make it easier for setup. So I'm going to turn off my onion skin there. Another thing that you should know is the camera settings. So when you hit this before you start, you can put it in manual mode if you wanted to then play with the light and the settings, the shutter and all of that. But most students will stick to auto because it's easier to understand. This plus sign here allows you to decide how many frames you will take every time you hit record. So standard is 1, so when you hit record it just takes 1 picture, but you can change that so that it'll actually take 2 pictures every time you hit record or more. And then that allows you to create more frames and then up the frame rate so that it will move faster. So you can play with that, but most students, and I traditionally will always stay with 1. And then this allows you to rotate and change your picture if you need to before you start taking pictures. So we're gonna leave that all as is. And then down here is your timeline of our finished project. And up here, the timer button is very useful.
Go.
One thing we found is that every time you press the record button, which is that big red circle there, it jiggles the iPad just a little bit that it's noticeable on camera for stop motion. So when you set the timer, if you do it at 10 seconds, it'll automatically take a picture every 10 seconds after you hit record. So that gives you 10 seconds essentially to move your items and get out of the way. And then it'll automatically take it. And you can always delete the frame if your hand got in the shot and stop the recording before it continues. And it does give you a beeping time countdown so that way you know when to get out of the frame.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more.
Make it count, guys.
Make it count.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, let's see how much of Nick's sleeve do we see.
Ooh, team. Wait, what? Oh. I don't think it was that bad. Was it bad?
Shot 49. Come here.
Was it bad?
Come here.
So once you've captured all of your frames, you can now adjust it. So I always say your first frame, you want to pause it. You want it to sit on the screen for maybe, this will be how many times it sits there. So let's say 10 times, and then we'll take a look at what it looks like. But then that way that first picture sits for a little bit before it starts to move. And I might even then pause somewhere in the middle. So then I might say right here, they get close together, and I'm going to pause again, and this time I'm going to maybe pause it 20 times. Let's do 18 times. Done. And then at the end. So I want this ending frame here to pause. So just by tapping it and pause, then I want that one to sit on the screen for 30 seconds because that's my last shot. We don't want it to disappear away so fast. So now when I play it, pauses, continues, little pause, and then if I don't like that, then I'm going to adjust. So on this one, you could see the 18 because I had it paused. So I'm just going to lower that pause to maybe, let's just do 8 seconds. And then try playing it again. And so and then another thing you can change is your frame rate. So when you hit that gear menu, gear wheel, the speed here is your frame rate. Our minimum is 10, which would make it slow. So when I play, that's the frame rate. And then our maximum or our standard film frame rate is 24. And that moves faster, but then again is shorter project. So, you know, you can play around with it, but well, let's say we'll try for 16 for frame rate and then play it again. So that one's good, and then, but then again, you know, it's very short, and we still have to add titles. So the thing with Stop Motion Studio is a lot of what you want to do in here is part of the paid version. So we're trying to stick to doing this without having to pay for anything. So if you wanted to add an image that you created, a slide, you have to pay for it. Adding sound effects, adding any effects is going to be required for you to pay for the premium version of Stop Motion Studio. So we're going to actually then export this out and then add our titles and our music in a different app. So when we hit the plus sign, for instance, audio, they do have sound effects and they do have theme music. But it does require you to pay for it. So we don't have to do that. So now I'm going to assume that my frame rate and my pictures are the way that I want. Now I want to export the project and send it out so that I can throw it into iMovie and add my titles. So I'm going to get out of this window and go back to my home screen for Stop Motion Studio. And then I'm going to hit select and pick this one. And then there is that up arrow to share. And we want to export our movie. And I'm going to save it. And this takes a while. And you can change the name. But make it something other than my movie. Click done. And we're just going to have it saved to the iPad. It may take a while before it shows up, but then we're able to then use it in another editor, whether you can upload it to Kapwing or use iMovie or Adobe Premiere Rush to then add all of the extra stuff that you want to do.